Mm.
And we are live with another episode of Brownish. You guys know my co-host, the beautiful, the funny, the musically talented
Hi.
Sasha Merci.
Oh my God. Yes, that's me. That's me. How are you? How are
Um,
you?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm impressed by the musical talent. Like sometimes I don't realize, and then all of a sudden you drop a little video and and you do this move, and I was like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. I be too my my fake ass Christina
I,
Aguilera.
I cannot sing at all. I cannot sing. I've been on auditions where they're like, "Oh, we just need you to sing," and I always tell my agents, "I'm like, yo, listen, I don't sing." They're like, "No, no, you just need to carry a tune." And then you're in the waiting room, and I see people doing that, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm
You
not gonna."
audition for the Heights? You was
I'm
trying
like,
to
I'm not gonna get this. I'm not gonna get this at all.
you were trying to audition for the Heights? Oh shit, I see you.
'Cause I'm about to go in there and be like, "All right, guys, twinkle, twinkle." I hear through the, when that's the worst when you're in an audition and you can hear through the wall how it's going for the other person. And you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that dude is killing it.
Oh yeah.
This dude is." I'm about to hit them with twinkle, twinkle.
I feel like my voice is so much better now than what it was when I was a teenager. I don't know if it's because my lungs got bigger or something like that, but when I was a teenager, I could sing, but I was very pitchy.
So what you trying to say? I got small lungs. Are you trying to
You
lung
got small
shame
little
me?
baby
Are
lungs.
you lung shaming me?
You got the baby lungs,
Are
okay?
you lung shaming me?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like that is something that somebody would be offended by. I'm being lung shamed right now.
I mean, everyone's offended, and
I'm lung shamed.
over it.
We got a great show today. I'm excited. I go way back with this dude. When I first came out to LA and was part of the comedy scene, he was one of the few guys that like reached out and like really made me feel welcomed and showed me around, showed me the ropes. He's taking me on the road. Dude's got numerous specials. He dropped one during quarantine, which we're going to talk about. Give it up for Steve Trevino.
Hey,
How are you, man?
how are you?
Man, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm alive. I'm well. I'm surviving. I have a beautiful baby girl that we just had 2 months ago. So
Wow,
yeah, life.
congratulations.
Thank you. Survived COVID. So me and my wife got COVID at the same time over the Christmas holiday with a newborn, and then my poor wife got a thing called thrush, and then she got mastitis. So we had a pretty rough December, but we're doing much better now.
Wow,
Oh,
that's
Yeah.
a lot, man. Well, let's rewind a little bit. You just had baby girl, so now you
Baby
got
girl.
two kids.
Two
Uh,
kids, and I gotta say, me and my wife were having this conversation. It's like I just feel like, and I'm probably gonna catch hell for this, but my wife, and I don't know if it's a female thing or my wife thing or what, but she's just amazing. I mean, the patience that she has for the
right.
baby and the love and the charisma. I mean, just everything that. I mean, she's just been. I mean, I can't even. I mean, super mom on top of having COVID, on top of having all those things. She hasn't complained once. She has the patience for it, and I just, man, I love my baby, but I want him to giggle and laugh, and that's when I come in,
yeah.
But right now she's so tiny, and I just, I tell people all the time, like for me, I'll drive a car on a 20-hour trip, and I'll drive 15 hours, and she can't drive but 2 hours. But for me with the baby, I'm good for the 2 hours. She's good for the 15. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She does
it's
look like
it's
little woman.
tough too because right now you got two. Your oldest one, he can do stuff,
Right.
and you forget that phase because that happened with me. My oldest one, like you could throw the ball with him, you could go out and do stuff, and then the little one, he just lays there, and you're like, oh, I forgot they don't do.
Oh yeah, I can't go outside because you're inside.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But
yeah.
we were really worried about, my son's 5, so we were really worried about how was he going to act, and before the baby, he would say things in bed like, "Are you guys still going to love me?" And are things going to change? And I said, "No, son, blah blah blah." But now he's really like, he'll run over with the passy and help when she's crying. He wants to give her a kiss before he goes to school. He gives
Oh
her a
my
kiss before.
God.
Yeah, it's been really a blessing, and it's just been, but then you know how it is there. You don't want to screw your kids up either.
Yeah, I remember.
Steve, we're gonna.
Yeah, it's inevitable. Yeah. I just don't want to screw him up so much that he wants to be in this business.
Yeah, that's so true. I have 2 older sisters, and one of them was telling me that when my second older sister was born, she was gonna throw her in the trash. Like
That's what I told.
Throw her on the trash, and my stepmom was like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Right.
Yeah, it was so crazy.
But we've been juggling that, and I am definitely a positive person, and I always see the good things in things. And however, coronavirus, obviously it has hit my pocketbook, by leaps and bounds. But I have been able to survive, and especially because of Texas, I'm still working. And just the time that I've been able to spend with my family. I had this weekend off, and I never have weekends off. So, I look at it as a time to be with my newborn baby girl, to be with my son, to be at home, So I've been, yes, the coronavirus, I want it to go away and I want us to go back to normal. But I look at what I have now and I appreciate that.
I think that for Corona, a lot of people that, are spending more time with their family, they're starting to realize, listen, like, I am grateful for the things that I do have versus the things that I wanted or whatever. And it was a very humble experience, especially for me, you know what I mean? And for a lot of people, I think,
1000%. And for me, I'm such a busybody, and I tell people, and Eric knows this about me. I'm a road dog, man. I have been on the road doing stand-up comedy minimum 45 to 50 weeks a year for 20 years.
Wow.
So when this happened, my life completely changed, right. And I joke in the special that I put out that it really did hurt mine and my wife's relationship because it threw a wrench into our system. Right. I'd go on the road. I was happy to go on the road because I was already tired of my wife. My wife was tired of me. And then day 2, I miss my wife. I miss my kids.
Oh my God.
I want to be home. Then I get home and I take my wife on a date or I'm really happy to see her. Then by day 3, she's like, hey, time to go. So, once that was disrupted, there was a lot of adjusting to do here at the house, Yeah.
Do you feel like, sorry.
I do want to hit that. Like, I know you consider yourself a road dog, but the one thing that did impress me during this whole quarantine, and Steve, we've got mutual comedian friends, and we've seen some of them going through the ringer of not knowing what to do with themselves, almost losing their whole, like, who they are, because stand-up is all they had. You have shifted and started doing stuff like you dropped the podcast, and again, like, you took it to the umpteenth level. Like, you could have just done the recording, but no, you and your wife end up doing this podcast and videoing and YouTube, and you're dropping stuff. And I was blown away by how you shifted and you made things work for you guys.
Well, I catch a lot of crap from this too, but when you're a Mexican American, Latino in general in this business, I learned very quickly that, especially a Mexican American like myself, I learned very quickly that Hollywood was not going to call, right? So all COVID virus did was push me to go, wait a minute, I control everything. I decide if I want a talk show with my wife on the air, and the fans will come, and if they don't come, then I'm not good, and I got to get better, So, yeah, man, I shifted gears into, hey, man, I'm building this YouTube channel. I'm doing this with my wife. I'm trying to make my wife a brand as well, because my wife is a talented actress who went to NYU to study acting. And the same thing for her, where every casting part was, hey, do you speak Spanish? Do you have an accent? And my wife wasn't getting called. And by the way, we moved to Texas, and my wife's like, oh my God, that's it, right? I'm not my agent. I'm not going to go on auditions. She's here. She's already booked 3 commercials.
Wow.
Because they cast her as a mommy or a person, right? They're not specifically going, oh, she has to be Latina. Does she have an accent? So we thank you, Eric, because I'm glad you noticed, because we literally took things into our own hands and said, hey, we're gonna put stuff out on our own, and if people like it, they'll come. And we've been lucky enough that the podcast, I would put our podcast in a successful category as of right now. I mean, it's not huge, but it's we're averaging anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 people a week. So we're proud of what we're doing, and we're putting it out there in a very real, honest way, so that I've always told my wife, America has to see us to understand that we exist.
Right.
Well, I'll say this, like I said in your intro, like you were one of the first guys that like reached out and was like took me around the store, laugh at you, were like, yo, you need to meet certain people. And you're right, it is tough in this industry when they're not going to hand us anything.
Right.
But I do believe that you were one of the first people that made me realize that we do need to build an ecosystem and sort of help each other out. So like the fact that you're like, oh, I'm glad you noticed. Yeah, I noticed, because I again, I'm rooting everybody on, and you've always been super helpful in the same way where you'll call me like, hey, with this post, next time you should do this, try this hashtag. And I've always found that like super genuine of you, like to take the time and effort to help people out. And I've seen you help other comics out. So, I think the tide will start changing in the industry. I know we've heard it before where it's like, oh, this is the year of the Latinos, and it never happens. But I think that old guard of there can only be one is gone. Like,
and it needs to be gone, and it also, like I've always said, man, because I get hit up all the time where they go, and I'm not going to name any names, but they're like, oh, you got pitched for this show, and then I hear, well, this other Latino comic didn't want to work with you, right? So I'm always like, I'm not the problem. I'll work with anybody. And by the way, I'll open, I'll headline, I'll middle, I'll host. I don't care. I think together we're stronger. And a lot of times where, well, don't work with that guy, or I don't want to work with that guy. And to me, it's frustrating because, I'm not afraid of any comic or any talent, right? Because we all have our lanes. We're all different people. We're different human beings. So when I saw you and you came to LA, and at that time, I remember you had a development deal, and it's always so sad. And I don't want to name any names, but I get so sad because you guys would come into town with deals, and I didn't have the heart to go, it's not going anywhere, right?
Right.
like you guys were all excited. I got a deal, and I'm like, oh, okay. I would just be happy for you, And then instead I would go, hey, here's my number. I'm willing to help anyway. If I'm always on the road, if you need to pick up a week and make a couple bucks, call me, And I've always been that way with everybody. You're just one of the people that picks up the phone, and calls me, and we have these conversations, which, by the way, again, not naming names, there's very successful comedians right now that aren't Latino who have called me and said, hey, walk me through how you did it. And then my managers would go, why are you sharing that information? Keep it to yourself. And I would go, they're not in my lane. I don't care. I want them to succeed.
Right.
But you're the only Latino comedian that has reached out and said, hey, Steve, you want to do this together? You want to talk about this? What are these thoughts? And I'm like, hey, man, my number has not changed in 20 years.
Right. I take it all the time, man. And you respond, which is as big as you've gotten. Like I've seen your clip blow up and headline it. You still pick up the phone, and I truly appreciate that.
I hope that I never have to change my number. But it does get to the point where, and it's funny because I always know, that if I'm going to Miami, which I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks, all of a sudden all these 305 numbers are like, hey man, tickets, and I'm like, how do I know 40 people? How do 40 people that I don't even know who has my number anymore hitting me up for like, it's crazy. But I try to keep my number, and I try to be available to anybody, man, because I really feel like one of us has to kick the door open, wide open.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. So when did you start doing stand-up comedy, and did you see yourself get as big as you are right now? How was that journey?
Man, you know what? I guess ignorance is bliss, right? And when you're young, you don't know any better. And I always wanted to be a comedian, and I look back at it, and I think Eric can really understand this. I look back at it, and when I started comedy, it was 1999, right? And at that point, no Latinos comedians were famous. It was Paul Rodriguez and John Leguizamo, and John Leguizamo's not a stand-up. Paul Rodriguez is a stand-up. There was no TV shows on the air, and here I was going, I just want to do stand-up. I had no idea the struggle and how hard it was going to be to break in, and through the years, just me insisting on getting on stage and trying to be the best comedian that I can be, and realizing that, oh, wait a minute, I have to do this on my own. And it's so humbling. Daily I'm humbled because we get these messages, we're almost at 1 million followers on Facebook. And we get hit up constantly with, oh my God, you're my favorite comedian. And I'm like, me? There's a bunch of them. And I'm your favorite? Or you saved my marriage? Or we survived cancer watching your clips? So those are the things for me. I just wanted to be a comedian, and I just kept doing it. And when they kept saying no, I just kept saying yes. And I just kept finding ways to do it. And I'm very proud to say that, we're doing Lubbock, Texas this week at half capacity. And we sold out 900 tickets before we got there, sold out.
Wow.
And we put the new show on sale yesterday, and we're already at 300 tickets sold. So we're going to sell out 1,800 tickets in Lubbock, Texas, without really trying. And it is one of those things where, I tell my crowds all the time, you are my employer. You employ me. You buy tickets, and I have a job because of you. So that's how I always look at it. And it has been, I never thought that, first of all, that my dream would come true. And my dream was to do this for a living. And not only do I do this for a living, I'm able to take care of my family in a very special way. So there was never I want to be rich, I want to be famous. I just wanted to do stand-up.
And who are your idols in stand-up comedy?
Eddie Murphy was a big one. I remember finding Eddie Murphy Raw. Watching Eddie Murphy Raw, or growing up, I wanted Bill Cosby to be my dad. Yeah. Right. Not anymore. But
I know. I know what you mean. That's exactly.
I remember a time when you would go into meetings and like, oh, what are you pitching? Like, I think the Latino Bill Cosby. And now you're like, I can't even say that name.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But that's another thing, right? That the Black community has been able to represent in a way that, as a Mexican American kid, I gravitated to that, right? Because there was no. I remember, watching Carlos Mencia when I was a kid on Def Comedy Jam, and making me feel like, oh, wait a minute, there's a Mexican dude on TV, and back then, Lopez had 0 TV credits, and then all of a sudden Mencia has an HBO special, and he was at that time this, kind of young hip guy, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, like that dude made it,
right?
So I hope to be that, and I think we all hope to be that for that young Latino that's sitting at home thinking about what their life is going to be and being able to see themselves.
Yeah. No, I always make that point, especially to because we see the talent pool with the Latin comics, and sometimes it can get thin because a lot of people get frustrated and stop doing it because there's no progress. And I tell people all the time, like, if we keep moving forward, there's that new crop behind us that goes, oh, they're there, we can get there, and we just keep laying down that groundwork for them.
And another thing that we fall into is. And I made sure to be out of that. And me and you talk about it all the time. is they only do Latino rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they're not at the Comedy Store. They're not doing just a room. They're doing it's Mexican Monday and it's Taco Tuesday and refried Friday and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that they're only doing that.
Yeah. But I think I think that's a very LA thing, because like that was the biggest shock for me when moving from New York. Because in New York it's just the comedy club. There is no theme nights. Like Gotham, New York Comedy Club, Comic Strip, Comedy Cellar, Caroline's. There's no themes, and that was like the first eye-opening thing for me when I got to LA. Walking into the clubs, like, hey guys, I'm a comic. I'm here from New York. I can get references, and they're like, okay, cool, yeah, come back on Refried Friday, and I was like, what?
Well, and I talk about that all the time. Like, being from Texas, we were just Texans, and in Texas. Dude, Mexican Americans run shit, right? Yeah. We're doctors, we're lawyers, we're everything. When I went to LA, everything was so segregated.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fact. Mm-hmm.
You go to New York, New Yorkers are just New Yorkers.
Yeah. Dude, I remember the first time getting up on a regular night at a club, and the manager meant this as a compliment, but I was like, what? Like, you wouldn't say this to anybody. I get up, I do my thing, I get off. She goes, wow, you did so great in front of a regular crowd. You can do like regular crowds. And I was like, I'm about to slap this person. What?
Well, dude, so I'm getting all these messages from Boston, from Pittsburgh, from the East Coast, Buffalo, New York. And I tell my agent, I go, dude, book me in Buffalo. Right? No. Trevino, come on, buddy. We're going to stick you to the Southwest. So I finally convinced him, and I said, look, dude, put me in Boston. Mm-hmm. Not only did I sell out, we ended up adding 4 shows.
That's amazing.
We did 10 sold out shows. We did 3,000 tickets in Boston. And he was like, oh, man, we should try Pittsburgh. I'm like, I've been telling you, man, I speak English.
Right.
I talk about my wife.
Right.
Like, how do they, so it's those things that we're having to overcome. And I moved to Texas going on 6 years now. And I always told myself that I wanted to come home. I wanted my kids to have grandparents close by. And I said, you know what, I have to get back home. And when I moved to Texas, I said, oh my God, I think I just kicked myself out of Hollywood. And then I realized that I was never really in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. I was doing my own thing anyway. Right. And now look at the 3 of us having a great conversation, connecting from across the country. And you don't need to be in Hollywood anymore because it doesn't matter. They're record labels are signing TikTokers.
Right.
So for me, it's now all about I'm gonna do it on my own. And that's another thing. I make enough money on my podcast. You're gonna offer me a pilot? I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna go to LA for 3 months to make no money, to not be able to podcast. Unless you're gonna give me a series, I'm good.
Right. Yeah.
So things have changed.
That's the good thing about now and things changing and the demand of our types of talent, because now we can really be like, these are our demands. Like, these are the things that I want. And unless you come correct, I don't need to budge at all. And I think that that's the beauty of you having a podcast, you having a presence on Facebook, you just being you. People are going to look and they're going to be like, you know what? I want to do whatever Steve's doing,
Well, and it's like with my life. Yeah. My life in quarantine, I go, I'm in Texas. I can shoot this thing for cheap, right? My fans will buy tickets to see it. They'll help me pay for it. And I don't need a deal from Amazon. I don't need a deal. Do I want one? Sure. Am I not going to take one? Of course I'm going to take it, but I'm not going to wait around for them to decide that I'm funny enough to be on. I just do it.
Yeah, and I have like a curious question. Like, so knowing that, do you ever think about maybe hiring the writers that you want to write your pilot and just like being like, from there, be like, you know what, I could do this my own way?
that's what we're doing now. I'm actually an interesting story, and I don't want to drop names again because it's not inked out yet. But there is a Latino producer, and he's a huge producer in Hollywood. And the funny thing is, his father-in-law found me on Facebook, and he sends a message to him, and he goes, "You have to find this guy, and you are obligated to work with him." So he called me up and he goes, "Hey man, let's have a meeting." I go, "I'm in Texas." He goes, "Great, let's do a Zoom meeting." So we do a Zoom meeting. And he's like, "Whatever you want to do, we're gonna do." So that was the first time that I've ever had a deal or an executive go, "Whatever you want to do, we're doing." So that's exactly what we're doing. We're gonna go to him, and he's gonna help us distribute it. And that was another thing that we discussed, because he is a huge producer. He goes, "Look, man, we don't have to go through the same channels.
Right.
I'll fund it. We'll shoot it. We'll figure out a way to distribute this. However we have to do it, we're going to do it." So again, like you said, it's building it to getting to a point where you can go, "It's going to be my way."
Right.
So, but it has to be, because they don't get it. We had a show on a network, and there was hot sauce on the table. What? So they don't get it, and they're not going to get it. We have to feed it to them.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, because I don't want to jump too far ahead from My Life in Quarantine. So how did that special come about? So pandemic happens. You're a guy who's on the road, like
all the time,
all the weekends out of the year. So how long were you home before you start going, I got to shoot something? Let's do it.
I was in the pattern of tour for a year, shoot a special, film it. Mm-hmm. So I had a special ready to go that we were going to film. My friend Pitbull, that's another guy. Me and Pitt have started to talk about, how do we change the game? How do we start working together? So Pitbull hits me up. He says, "Look, I want to produce your next comedy special." And we were going to call that one I Speak Wife. And then coronavirus hit, and all of a sudden, we can't film. So I had never, and I'm being very candid, I had never dealt with depression. I never knew what depression was. As a matter of fact, I knew it was real, but I was also one of these people that was like, "Oh my God, get over it." Like, What do you mean you're depressed? Get up, right? But I found myself depressed and scared, and for the first time in my life, I was having anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
And my wife finally goes, "It's not just happening to you. It's happening to the whole world."
Right.
Yes.
She goes, "Let's do something." So that's when we started doing the Wednesday. We called it Pardon the Bitching instead of Pardon the Interruption. And then me and my wife just every Wednesday would go live on my Facebook and bitch at each other. And we had fun with it. And then I go, what am I doing? Why am I sitting here? I got to get out of this. So I wrote with my writing partner, Brian Hart. I wrote out. I didn't even perform it. I wrote the special out. Mm-hmm. And I go, I will perform it in front of the mirror.
Right.
And then as soon as we have the time to shoot it, I'm going to shoot it as a stamp in time, and what my specific experience was in quarantine, and because it was a quarantine special, man, I dove real deep. And I don't know if you saw it, but man, I talk about my miscarriage with my wife.
Wow.
And I don't think anybody has ever tackled the miscarriage. And I told my wife, I said, people have to know that this happens and that it's real. And I felt like because it wasn't a regular special, that it opened the door for, and I can get really personal,
right,
and really real. So when we got it, and the people around me were like, "Steve, do you really want to do miscarriage? How do you make miscarriage funny?"
Right.
And I go, well, the blessing about my miscarriage is that we got pregnant during COVID.
Right.
And when I walk my wife out on stage and she's 7 months pregnant, That's why it's great, because there's a win.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we did it. And
it's always so funny when somebody says, "How are you gonna make this topic funny?" Every comment is like, "Hold my beer, let me show you real quick." Like
it's what I do. Tragedy, plus time, right?
When I did the HBO taping, I was like, I'm going to talk about my father's death and Parkinson's. And sure enough, it was a lot of people going, yo, you going to talk about it? Like, how you going to make that funny? Hold my beer. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
But the more real and the more honest that I try to be on stage, the more people gravitate. The more people go, oh my God, man, that's us. Right. You know, that's our life. And even in the podcast, me and the wife are like, man, we have to be honest.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's terrifying when you're up there and you're like, I'm going to talk about this. It's so personal. But there's something about like going through that material and then finding those people that go, oh my God, thank you for talking about that. We went through that.
Right.
And just, it's almost like a liberating feeling for them that you're doing that.
What was really interesting is I got hit up by a lot of men. Mm-hmm. A lot of men were like, for the first time, I had a real conversation with my wife about our miscarriage, you know, and then women saying, oh my God, you know, because I'm kind of a burly man's man, you talking about it helped my husband feel like he could talk about it.
Right.
You know, so, you know, that's when I decided, all right, I got to film it. I got to do something. I got to put a stamp in time. And again, I'm always doing things, or I try at least to do things that no comedian has ever done.
Right.
You know, no comedian had put a Texas country music star on stage. I did that. No comedian shot in a real life barn in the middle of Texas. I did that with Till Death. Mm-hmm. You know, no comedian was filming during a quarantine. I did that, you know. So I'm always trying to think outside the box. I'm always trying to think, you know, because special is a special. How do I make my special special?
Right. And I love the brought the family up. How were they open to being on stage with you?
Oh yeah, my son loves it. You know, like I said, my wife's a performer herself, but that was another thing is I always want to celebrate my culture in my specials. And I thought to myself, I'm tired of hearing, you know, your family doesn't exist. Right? Your family's not real, right? This Mexican American who speaks English, who, you know, here's a real Mexican American family, and I'm going to put them on stage, right, so that you can see that we're not all urban and we're not all rapists, murderers, and drug dealers. We're a family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so that was why, you know, bringing the family on stage was important to me, was so that I could represent who we are, and so that you can see us on stage and go, well, they're just like us. Yeah. They're normal. So that was, I'm glad you brought that up, Eric, because every special I do, you know, relatable. Roger Creager's on stage singing Rancho Grande.
Yeah.
Till Death, it's a Dia de los Muertos theme, right?
Yeah.
My life in quarantine. Here's my whole family, from my mom to my father-in-law to my wife and my kid.
The beauty about you know, incorporating your family into your art and what you do is that, yes, it is relatable, but family doesn't have any, like, there's families in any culture, right? And just by seeing that unity, anybody can relate to that. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter if you're black, you're going to see a family. Like, just like how we were saying, He Who Shall Not Be Named, we saw his show and we were like, I want him to be my dad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's just being a family, just even watching Blackish on TV, just watching these types of shows, like
the Goldbergs, right?
Goldbergs,
you know,
yeah. Which one?
And I always say, you know, and I know you guys are from New York, so you have Jewish friends. You know, I want my sitcom to be as Mexican as the Goldbergs are Jewish.
Right.
If you hung out with Jewish people and their families, that's a Jewish family.
Right.
They don't come out and do yarmulke jokes. They're just a Jewish family.
Right.
You know, Ray Romano is Italian, but there's not Italian jokes. You know, and that's what I always tried to explain when I would go in and pitch my show. I would say, look, my race is not the punchline. Mm-hmm. You know, well, how is it going to be Mexican? It is.
Yeah.
It just is. It's the same way that I know Tony Romo's Mexican.
Yeah, it's right here, guys. It's right. You don't need much else. Yeah, I think people would be blown away if networks gave other races those notes. Like exactly like the Goldbergs. Like, hey guys, can we put more menorahs? More.
Can we Jew it up a little? Can we?
Yeah.
It's not Jewy enough. Can we?
Yeah.
It's letting these networks know, like, let us show you the human experience, and throughout the human experience, I'm gonna introduce my culture. It doesn't have to be like, oh, look at me, I'm Mexican or I'm Dominican immediately. Like, I am a human being, let me share my experience, and boom, lead you into my culture. And that's just how it should be.
My favorite thing that Eric and I have as friends is that anytime something hits the trades, immediately we're like, taco truck again. Another taco truck. Like, I'll send him, or he'll send me the link, or I'll send him the link, and he's like, struggle, taco truck. Here it is. But it's every time.
Oh yeah. And it blows my mind that Hollywood keeps doing it. Like, I don't know if you saw the new one on CBS, Coyote. It's Michael Chiklis, and it's like, come on, man, really?
Again.
I haven't heard of it.
It's about
I haven't even heard of it either.
He's a border agent who now has a heart, so he starts transporting people across the border. I'm like,
I gotta see what this is crazy.
Oh my God, dude! But again, it's like, does it always have to be the struggle? Does it? I point out a trend. Every comedian that has ever had an HBO special now. Regular HBO, forgive me, Eric, not the ones that you guys have shot. Regular HBO, every one of them from Los Angeles area, right? Struggled and was on food stamps, right? And every one of them has the same parents from Mexico. Like, everyone has the same pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about all the time. Look, man, if you're a black person in America, you have a comedian for you.
Yeah.
From Cat Williams to Kevin Hart to Eddie Murphy to Richard Pryor, there's somebody out there that you go, that's how I am. That's who I am. If you're a Texas Mexican American like me, I don't relate to George Lopez. I don't relate to Felipe Esparza. I don't relate to Paul Rodriguez. I think they're funny and I like to watch them, but it's not me. Yeah. Doesn't represent me, Yeah,
we still got a ways to go as far as shows and representation, because exactly what you're saying, they still want that stereotypical bomb. They still want these little things, and it's like, well, we could just be like Black Dish and have it's a family, and
right.
These are the struggles. But
here's the bullshit we go through, right? Like everybody else. I've got we're building a patio in the backyard right now. And I don't know what it is about me, but I'm out there working with them. I hired these people, yet I'm putting in hours.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, "What is wrong with you? You paid them." And I go, "Yeah, but I gotta be out there working with them."
Right.
But it's as simple as that, right? That's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Why am I out there? It's just in me to go, I can't watch these guys work.
Right.
I gotta haul bricks with them. Do you
have any siblings? Like, how many siblings do you have?
I have an older sister and a younger sister, and me and my older sister. My older sister is very sweet, and I can't even tell you, she's so amazing with my kids. But we are not close. But me and my little sister, we're 5 years apart, but we're best friends. I talk to her almost daily. I am the padrino to one of her daughters, and she's the madrina to my son. We're very, very close. But I am a middle child, and that's usually where the talented one comes from. It's middle child, divorced parents. Okay, you have a chance to be talented.
And how much did that play in you wanting to become this comedian? Like, when did it hit you? Like, I know that you were like, oh, I always wanted to be a comedian, but what was the specific moment where you're like, you know what? I think I could do this.
I saw, and I always tell the story because my dad and my uncles and his cousins, they're some of the toughest men that I've ever met in my life. I mean, they're all welders and pipe fitters, and some of them would come to the house on Harley Davidsons, and I mean, these men are hard men, and back when I was growing up as a kid, our house was the barbecue house, the party house. So every Friday, everybody came to our house, and all the women were inside and all the men were outside. That's how it was. One night, they're all inside, all of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to all of them laugh. And I'm like, I've never seen, number one, them together, mm-hmm. right? And number two, my dad and my uncles, they don't smile. Right. And here they are, they're falling over with laughter, and they were watching Richard Pryor on HBO. And I remember thinking, oh shit, that's a job? That's going to be my job. That's power. That guy got the toughest men in the world that I know in here with their wives, and they're all laughing together. So I memorized Eddie Murphy Raw, and I told my dad, I can do what he did. And my dad would put me on the picnic table outside, and I remember making these grown, scary. My uncles are scary. These grown, scary men laugh, and I'm 9 years old, and I fell in love with it. I go, this is what I'm gonna do, and I just, to me, it felt like, oh my God, this makes me so happy to make these. I mean, I would have them rolling, and these men, they're partying. They still have their welder's hat on. I don't even know what a welder's hat looks like, but they got their welder's hat on and the chain wallet and cowboy boots and the tattoos everywhere. And here I am making these guys laugh, and I'm like, oh my, that's what I'm gonna do. So right. At school, they'd be like, Steve, what are you gonna do when you grow up? I'm like, a comedian. That's what I'm doing.
That's funny. That's funny you say that. I joke with my wife all the time. I'm like, two things I never saw my father was a smile and his feet. Like, I just never seen them.
My dad's legs, bro. He wears shorts, and we're like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
You're wearing shorts and tennis shoes? Like, what?
For me, I grew up with 6 brothers, and it was around the time we know girls are not funny and stuff. So when I knew I could make them laugh, I'm like, okay, I can make anybody laugh.
But again, right? It's power, right? And and then you evolve from, I want to be really good at this.
Right.
In the beginning, it's, quick jokes or snaps or a joke that somebody told you that you're repeating. And then you go, wait a minute, I want to tell this story in a really funny way. But then you find yourself at parties in the kitchen telling a story that you told 3 weeks ago, and it got better. And you're like, ooh, I even told it better.
Yeah.
I feel like awesome.
I feel like comedy is also very therapeutic. I remember somebody asked me, they were like, does it get heavy on you when you are speaking of something that's a very heavy topic and then you turn it into a joke? And I'm like, no, for me, it's kind of like an escape. Like, not so long ago, my aunt, she was fighting cancer, and cancer is very devastating to my family because it actually took my mother. So it is a serious topic. But I remember going on stage one time, and she had cancer. She's going through chemo, and I give her a gift, and she's like, that's what you're going to get me? And I was like, wow, you'd think someone that's going through cancer, they're going to be humbled, but she's still a bitch, So that moment is able to let me leave the reality of the situation and make a joke out of that.
Well, that's exactly, it's survival.
It's just how we survival. Yes. And people think that we're making fun of it or just trying to act like putting a Band-Aid over it. It's like, no, that's how you heal. And I think that with comedy, you can speak about the elephant in the room, make a joke about it. People cry laughing and go, all right, there's an elephant in the room. We got to get him out of here. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah. And look, I also feel, and I think this is a comedian trait. I think that we are very we love very deeply.
Yes.
Comedians love very deeply and care. We care. We truly, truly care. And we're very fragile people. So, we use our sense of humor to guard ourselves from that, and I'm the guy, right? If I make it to a wedding, and now Steve's gonna talk, and I'm like, oh crap. So then, and you notice as soon as I start like getting to a moment where I'm like, man, I'm gonna cry, and then here's a dick joke.
Yeah.
To get out of, I'm not gonna let myself cry. F this, right?
Right. Right.
Because it's survival, and it's who we became out of survival. I found myself at 4 different elementary schools, right? So you got to make new friends. You gotta find a way to adapt to situations. I always say, man, divorced parents, traveling a lot, that creates comedians.
Yeah. True.
So what's next for you, Steve? Like, I'm hoping there's a light at the end of this tunnel we see the vaccine coming out. I know you want to get back on the road, but like, what's next on your plate of projects you're working on?
I want to really focus on making the podcast a very successful podcast, and I've noticed that when I put my mind to doing something that we do it. So putting a lot of energy into that, and just I just keep, and I know this sounds hacky and whatever, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other, and I really try to win the day, and I tell people that my philosophy is, what did I do today? What did I do today to make my life better for tomorrow?
Right.
And that's it, man. And if I end up making this podcast enormously successful, I'll just keep moving forward.
Right.
Because I know that I can, like my wife, we've really focused on helping her create her brand. And here's my wife, who is not a comedian. She's got 15,000 Instagram followers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really proud of that, but if we get this TV show, great. If we don't, fine. I'll just keep putting out specials and keep doing things my way until, I love to work. So as long as I'm doing stand-up and making people laugh, man, I'm really happy.
Love that.
That's awesome. And right now, My Life in Quarantine is streaming now on Amazon. So go check it out. Super funny, dude. What about the other specials? Relatable, Till Death With. Are those also on Amazon?
Relatable's complicated, but my first one, Grandpa Joe's Son, is on there. We call that the Fat Steve special.
Oh,
yeah. And then
you have gone through transformations, by the way.
Yeah. I've been hitting the weights, dog. Till Death is on Amazon Prime, and then late February, early March, we're going to film I Speak Wife. So I'll be putting out two 1-hour specials within 6 months.
Love it. That's so dope.
Hold on, before we let you go, I do want to show people Grandpa Joe, Steve Trevino. Steve looking good. Steve
270 pounds there.
Wow, you look different. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's Steve right there. Looks like he owns a sandwich shop and he makes the best sandwiches.
No. That is Steve Trevino, poor and struggling. That's what.
Really? Wow.
But Erik, I miss you, buddy. And it's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you, Sasha. You're beautiful and smart, and that's another thing. Now that I have a daughter, I always I'm like, oh, you're so pretty, but then I'm like, but you're gonna be smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want her just to be pretty. You know what I mean?
Right.
Appreciate you for coming on, man. Everybody go follow Steve. What are your handles where people can find you?
And if you put Steve Trevino in a search engine, you will find my wife, you'll find me, you'll find my specials, you'll find everything you need to know. But at the end of the day, I love making people laugh. And if you want to join me and check out my stuff, check out my wife, I think you guys will have fun.
Yeah, go check it out. And there's also clips of your son up on stage too, which I always found awesome.
Because I did not want him in this business.
Yeah,
but he's like, Dad, I need to tell jokes. Like, he really wanted to do it.
Real? He's like,
yeah.
Oh my God.
So we put him in his little tuxedo, and he did an amazing job.
So go check him out, Steve. Thank you so much, man. I can't wait to see what else you come out with, man. Big fan. I'm also your friend. So anytime you need anything, do not hesitate to reach out.
I love you, my dude. We'll see you soon.
All right, man. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll catch you next Monday.
All right. Take care.